First contact. The metal doors slid open with a soft hiss. John Mason stood at the entrance of the observation room, his heart beating fast as he looked through the reinforced glass. Inside the containment area, the alien girl paced back and forth like a caged animal. Her skin had a slight blue tint, and her silver hair moved as if caught in a gentle breeze, even though there was no wind. "She's hurt 7 guards already," said Director Chen, standing behind John. "Are you sure you want to try this?" John nodded, his eyes never leaving the alien. Every living being needs connection. She's just scared and alone. The alien girl suddenly stopped pacing and turned her head sharply toward the observation window. Her eyes glowed with an intense purple light, and she bared her teeth, sharp and white against her blue skin. "She can sense us watching," John said softly. "Those markings on her skin, they're not just patterns. I think they're some kind of sensory organs." John spent the next 3 hours just sitting by the window, making notes. The alien girl ignored him at first, but he noticed how she kept glancing his way when she thought he wasn't looking. He pulled out a small device from his pocket and played some soft music. Simple tunes from Earth's classical collection. The alien's markings flickered with a soft blue light. She tilted her head, listening. "See that?" John whispered to himself. "You like music, don't you?" The next day, John brought something special. He placed a small container of food in the delivery slot, not the standard meals they had been giving her, but something different. The computer had analyzed traces of her home planet's soil, and John had worked with the station's botanists to grow something similar to what she might have eaten at home. The alien girl's reaction was immediate. Her nose twitched, and her markings pulsed with a warm golden light. She approached the food slot cautiously, her movements smooth like flowing water. "It's okay," John said softly, even though she couldn't understand his words. "It's safe. It's for you." She snatched the container quickly and retreated to her corner. But instead of devouring it like she had done with other food, she held it carefully. Her fingers traced the edge of the container, and for the first time, John saw something other than anger or fear in her expression. It was recognition. The next few days followed a pattern. John would come in, play different types of music, and bring her food from the plants they were growing. Each day, she would come a little closer to the window where he sat. Her markings began to show new colors, soft greens, and gentle purples instead of the harsh reds of before. On the 5th day, something changed. John was sitting in his usual spot, reading a book about alien cultures, when he felt something different. He looked up slowly and found himself staring directly into her eyes. She had come right up to the window, her hand pressed against the glass. John's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes weren't just purple, they had specks of gold in them, like a galaxy of stars. Slowly, very slowly, he raised his hand and placed it against the glass, matching her position. For a long moment, they stayed like that, hands separated by the glass. Her markings glowed with a color he had never seen before, a soft, pearly white that seemed to shimmer. Then she did something that made John's heart stop. She pointed to herself and made a sound. It was like nothing he had ever heard before, somewhere between a musical note and a whisper. "Zara." "Zara," John repeated carefully. He pointed to himself. "John." She tilted her head, her markings swirling with new patterns. "On," she tried, the sound strange on her tongue. A smile spread across John's face. Behind him, he could hear the observation room's door opening and excited whispers from the station's staff. But he didn't turn around. This moment was too important. For the first time since she had been brought to the station, Zora's lips curved into something that wasn't a snarl. It wasn't quite a smile. Not yet. But it was a beginning. John knew that this was just the first step. There would be challenges ahead, misunderstandings, and probably more setbacks. But in this moment, watching the alien girl try to copy his smile, he knew something important had changed. The wild, angry creature they had first encountered was still there, but now they had seen something else too. Someone who could learn, who could respond to kindness, who could try to connect. And sometimes, John thought, that's all anyone really needs, a chance to connect. Building trust. John walked into the observation room early the next morning, carrying something that looked like a glowing cube. The other scientists watched with curiosity as he set it down near his usual spot. Zara was already waiting by the window, her silver hair floating gently around her face. "Good morning, Zara," John said softly. Her markings flickered in response. They had learned that the patterns of light across her skin were as much a language as words. Today, they swirled with gentle blues and greens, a far cry from the angry reds of her first days. The cube John brought suddenly lit up, projecting holographic colors into the air. Zara's eyes widened, and her markings pulsed with excitement. John watched carefully as different colors floated through the air: red, blue, green, yellow. Each time a color appeared, Zora's skin markings would shift to match it perfectly. "That's what I thought," John said, making notes. "You communicate through colors too, don't you?" He pressed a button on the cube, and it projected a simple image: a cup of water. Zara's markings flashed a deep blue. John quickly wrote it down. He changed the image to food, and her markings turned a warm orange. Over the next few hours, they developed their own simple language: blue for water, orange for food, purple for music, green when she was happy, red when she was upset. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. "She's learning incredibly fast," Dr. Sarah Chen noted, watching from the doorway. "But the council wants faster progress. They're getting impatient." John frowned. "You can't rush trust," he said, but he knew she was right. The station council was under pressure to show results. Later that day, John tried something new. He brought in a large screen and showed Zora images of her home planet, taken before its destruction. Her reaction was unexpected. Instead of sadness, her markings began to dance with countless colors, creating patterns he had never seen before. Then, to everyone's amazement, she began to sing. It wasn't like any human song. It was more like the aurora borealis had been turned into sound. Her voice shifted between notes that shouldn't have been possible, while her markings created a light show that matched her voice perfectly. "She's telling a story," John whispered, recording everything. This must be how her people shared their history. But the moment was interrupted by Director Stevens bursting into the room. "We need results, Mason. Real communication, not just lights and colors." Zara's song stopped abruptly. Her markings flared bright red, and she backed away from the window. The temperature in her containment area dropped suddenly. Another of her species' unusual abilities they were still discovering. "Everyone out," John ordered, noticing the frost beginning to form on the windows. "Now." Instead of leaving, though, John stayed. He picked up the color cube and projected a gentle green light. Then, remembering her song, he began to hum a simple earth lullaby. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the frost stopped spreading. Zara's markings shifted from angry red to uncertain purple, then to a mix of blue and green. She moved back to the window, and to John's surprise, placed both hands against the glass. Her markings formed patterns he had seen in the historical records. They were mathematical equations, the universal language. "Dr. Chen," John called out softly, "bring me a tablet. I think she's ready to really talk." For the next hour, Zara used her markings to show complex mathematical formulas, while John rushed to write them down. They weren't just random numbers. They were coordinates, star maps, the history of her people written in the language of mathematics. The day ended with an unexpected breakthrough. As John was preparing to leave, Zara pressed her hand against the glass one last time. Her markings formed a pattern that exactly matched the molecular structure of water, then shifted to show the human symbol H2O. "She's been learning our science all along," John realized. "Just by watching us, listening to us, she understands far more than we thought." That night, As John filed his report, he added a personal note. Zora's species doesn't just communicate with colors and sounds. They communicate with knowledge itself. Every pattern on her skin is a piece of information, a story, a formula. We've been trying to teach her our language, when all along, she's been trying to teach us hers. The implications were staggering. But as John looked at the final sentence of his report, he felt both excitement and worry. Zora isn't just learning to communicate. She's rewriting our understanding of what communication can be. The breakdown. The space station's corridor lights flickered red as the emergency alarm blared. Inside her containment area, Zora's skin markings pulsed with intense crimson patterns that matched the flashing lights. Her eyes, usually a soft purple, now blazed like twin supernovas. "Shut off those alarms," John shouted, running into the observation room. "It's triggering something in her." But it was too late. The walls of Zora's containment area began to frost over, not with the gentle ice from before, but with strange crystalline patterns that glowed from within. The temperature dropped so rapidly that the reinforced windows started to crack. "Everyone evacuate," Director Chen ordered through the intercom. "Mason, that includes you." John ignored the order. Through the spreading frost, he could see Zora's markings changing rapidly, not just showing colors now, but complex patterns that seemed to bend the light around her. The air in her chamber began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but these waves were cold enough to freeze. She's not just controlling temperature, John realized, his breath fogging in the increasingly cold room. She's manipulating energy itself. Zora's silver hair floated upward, as if gravity had ceased to exist in her chamber. Objects began to lift off the ground. Her bed, books, the color cube they'd been using to communicate. They orbited around her like planets around a star. Then John saw something that made his heart stop. In the corner of her chamber, reality itself seemed to bend. Through the distortion, he caught glimpses of another place, a world with two suns and crystal forests that sang in the wind. "Her home," he whispered. "She's trying to go home." But the portal, if that's what it was unstable. Each time it flickered, the station's power fluctuated dangerously. They were all in danger, but John couldn't leave her like this. He pressed his hand against the cold window, ignoring the frost that immediately began to form on his skin. "Zora," he called out, "remember the stars." It was something they had discovered during their lessons. Her people navigated not by maps, but by memorizing the songs of stars. Each star had its own unique frequency, its own music that only her species could hear. John quickly pulled out his tablet and played the recording they had made of her star song from yesterday. The sound filled the room, competing with the blaring alarms. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, slowly, Zora turned toward him. Her markings shifted, showing the same mathematical patterns from their earlier lessons, but now John understood what they meant. They were coordinates, not of physical space, but of frequencies. He adjusted the song's frequency according to her patterns. The new sound that emerged was strange and beautiful, like the harmony of distant galaxies. The effect was immediate. The floating objects began to descend, the frost patterns retreated, and the reality-bending portal in the corner collapsed in on itself. Zora's markings gradually shifted from angry red to a new color, a deep, pulsing indigo that they had never seen before. When she finally pressed her hand against the window to match John's, her touch left behind a pattern that looked like a star map made of light. "What happened?" Director Chen asked, cautiously entering the room. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," John said, still watching Zora. "She was teaching us again. Her species, they don't just communicate with colors or math or songs. They communicate with reality itself. The patterns on her skin, they're not just decorative or even just language. They're frequencies that can manipulate energy, temperature, maybe even space-time." He turned to face the director. The alarm didn't just scare her. It disrupted her connection to the station's natural frequency. She was trying to find her way home the only way she knew how. Zora's markings shifted again. forming complex equations that spread across her skin like flowing water. But this time, they weren't coordinates or star maps. They were something else entirely. "Look," John said, quickly copying down the patterns. "She's showing us how her people maintained harmony with the frequencies around them." This isn't just science. It's art and music and physics all wrapped into one. That night, after Zara had calmed completely and the station's systems had returned to normal, John added something new to his daily report. "We've been thinking of Zara as a survivor, a refugee, someone who needs our help. But what if we're the ones who need help understanding? What if her people's way of seeing the universe as an interconnected web of frequencies and patterns is what we've been missing all along?" As he wrote, Zara watched from her chamber, her markings now showing gentle waves of blue and gold. And in the space between them, the air seemed to shimmer with possibilities yet to be understood. Cultural exchange. Morning on the space station brought an unexpected sight. The walls of Zara's containment chamber had transformed overnight. Her skin markings had somehow transferred their patterns onto the surfaces around her, creating what looked like a living star map that shifted and moved with its own rhythm. "Incredible," John breathed, pressing his hand against the observation window. "She's recreated her planet's sky." But it wasn't just any sky. As John watched, the patterns began to tell a story. The lights formed shapes, creatures that looked like a cross between Earth's deep sea life and aurora borealis, buildings that seemed to be made of pure energy, and gardens where crystal flowers grew and sang to the twin suns. Her civilization, John realized. She's showing us how they lived. Today's session started differently. Instead of John teaching Zara, she had decided to teach him. Her markings pulsed with purpose as she pointed to different parts of her stellar mural. Each pattern corresponded to a specific memory, a piece of her culture. Dr. Mason called one of the younger scientists, rushing in. "The computer's picking up sound waves we've never detected before." John listened carefully. Beneath the station's usual hum, there was something else. A melody so faint it was barely there, like whispers from distant stars. Zara's markings suddenly lit up with excitement. She pressed both hands against the glass and began to glow with a soft, pearl-like luminescence. The sound grew stronger. "It's not coming from her," John said in amazement. "She's helping us hear what's always been there." The stars, they really do sing. Through their new color mathematics language, Zara explained something extraordinary. Her people hadn't built their cities. They had grown them by harmonizing with the natural frequencies of their world. Every structure, every piece of technology, worked in concert with the universe's own rhythms. But the most astonishing revelation came when Zara showed them how her species learned. Unlike humans who gain knowledge through study and practice, her people absorbed information through a process she called frequency resonance. When they encountered new information, their markings would naturally attune to its pattern, incorporating it into their living library of knowledge. This explained how she had learned so much about human science just by being in the station. Her markings hadn't just been reacting to their presence. They had been reading and recording everything around her. "Watch this," John said, holding up a tablet displaying a simple Earth children's book. Zara's markings shifted, and suddenly the story appeared on her chamber walls, translated into her people's pattern language. But she didn't just translate the words. She added layers of meaning through color, mathematics, and frequency that made the simple story express ideas humans had never imagined. Then something unexpected happened. As Zara continued translating human stories, her chamber's walls began to vibrate at specific frequencies. The vibrations spread through the station, creating a harmonic resonance that made the metal walls sing softly. "She's not just learning our language," John explained to the amazed staff. "She's teaching the station itself to speak." The day's biggest surprise came during what was supposed to be a routine medical scan. As the scanner passed over Zara, its readings revealed something extraordinary. Her markings weren't just on her skin. They ran through her entire body in three-dimensional patterns, like a living, breathing computer made of light and energy. "Each pattern is a story," Zora communicated through their shared color math language. Each frequency is a memory. We are not separate from the universe. We are its songs taking form. That evening, as the station hummed with new harmonies, John made a startling discovery. The patterns Zora had shared weren't just decorative or educational. They were seeds. Given the right frequency and energy, they could grow into living technology that worked in perfect harmony with its environment. In his report that night, John wrote, "We thought we were teaching Zora about human culture, but she's teaching us something far more important. She's showing us a way of life where technology and nature aren't in conflict. They're different expressions of the same universal song." As he finished writing, the station's lights dimmed slightly, then brightened again, pulsing in a pattern that matched Zora's markings perfectly. Somewhere in the distance, the stars sang their ancient songs, and for the first time, thanks to Zora, humanity could finally hear them. The challenge. The news arrived like a storm cloud on a clear day. Bio-Research Station 7 is demanding her transfer, Director Chen announced, her voice tight with concern. They're sending a transport ship in 48 hours. John stood in the observation room, watching as Zora's markings shifted from their usual calm patterns to swirling waves of anxiety. She could sense something was wrong before anyone told her. But today was different. Instead of the frost patterns that usually appeared when she was distressed, something new happened. Her markings began to emit a soft humming sound, and the air around her chamber filled with tiny points of light, like a galaxy in miniature. She's creating a star memory, John realized, recognizing the pattern from their recent cultural exchanges. But this wasn't just any memory. It was forming in real time. The tiny lights arranged themselves into a perfect replica of the station's layout. Within this miniature model, John could see tiny figures moving. The station's crew, represented as patterns of light and frequency. In the center, Zora's chamber glowed like a beating heart, connected to everything around it by threads of light. "Look at this," John called to the other scientists. "She's showing us how she's become part of the station's ecosystem." Through their shared color math language, Zora revealed something extraordinary. During her time here, she hadn't just been learning. She had been harmonizing with the station's core systems. The subtle songs she taught the station weren't just communication. They were maintaining crucial balances in everything from air purification to gravity stabilization. As if to demonstrate, Zora's markings pulsed with a new frequency. Immediately, the station's lights brightened, and the air seemed fresher. The subtle vibration in the floor plates, which the crew had always assumed was from the engines, changed its tone slightly. "She's been helping regulate the station all along," John explained to the gathering crowd of scientists and engineers. "Her people don't just use technology. They become one with it." But the most astonishing revelation came when they checked the station's efficiency readings. Since Zora had begun her subtle harmonizing, power consumption had dropped by 30%, air quality had improved by 45%, and structural integrity had strengthened by 25%. "It's not just about keeping her here," John argued in the emergency council meeting. "She's evolving our understanding of space station design." To prove his point, Zora did something unprecedented. Her markings began to pulse with a complex rhythm, and suddenly, holographic projections appeared throughout the station, not from the regular systems, but from the light itself. These projections showed designs for a new type of space station, one that worked like a living organism rather than a machine. In these plans, energy flowed like blood through veins, waste was converted into resources through harmonic resonance, and the very structure of the station could adapt to space conditions, like a living thing adjusting to its environment. "This is beyond anything we've imagined," Chief Engineer Rodriguez whispered, studying the flowing designs. "She's not just suggesting improvements. She's showing us how to build living stations." But the research station's transport ship was still coming. As tension mounted, Zora revealed one final surprise. Her markings shifted to show a pattern they'd never seen before, a frequency that seemed to exist between spaces, in the quantum realm where possibility became reality. Through this pattern, she demonstrated how her people had once built ships that didn't just travel through space, but with it. These vessels didn't fight against the universe's forces. They danced with them, using harmony instead of force to achieve incredible feats of exploration. That evening, as John prepared to fight for Zora's right to stay, she pressed her hand against the glass. Her markings formed words in every human language simultaneously, while also expressing concepts that had no human words. The message was clear. She wasn't just a subject to be studied or a resource to be used. She was a bridge between two ways of understanding the universe. In his emergency report to the station council, John wrote, "Removing Zora wouldn't just be losing a valuable research subject. It would be severing a connection to a completely new way of existing in space. She's not just teaching us about her culture. She's showing us how to evolve our own." As the station's lights pulsed in harmony with Zora's patterns, the crew waited anxiously for the council's decision, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just Zora's fate, but possibly the future of human space exploration itself. The decision. The transport ship from Bio-Research Station 7 hung in space like a dark promise, its shadow falling across the observation windows. Inside, Zora's chamber had become something never before seen in human space exploration. Her markings now created a field of living light that filled the entire chamber. Within this field, reality seemed to flutter like pages in a book, each layer showing different possibilities, different futures. But what stunned the arriving officials wasn't just the display. It was what happened when they tried to scan her chamber. "Impossible," muttered Dr. Wells, the lead researcher from Station 7, staring at his instruments. "The chamber exists in multiple quantum states simultaneously." Zora had transformed her containment area into what John would later call a probability sphere, a space where multiple realities gently overlapped. Through this extraordinary demonstration, she showed them something that changed everything. Her species hadn't just mastered space travel, they had learned to dance with reality itself. As the officials watched, Zora began her defense, not with words or even their shared color math language, but with something far more profound. Her markings pulsed with a new frequency that somehow connected to every piece of technology in the station. Suddenly, every screen, every holographic projector, every surface capable of reflecting light began showing the same thing: the future. But these weren't simple predictions. They were living possibilities, each one showing how her presence could transform human space exploration. Stations that could heal themselves using harmonic resonance, ships that could navigate by singing to the stars, colonies that grew from single seeds of crystalline light, communication systems that used quantum entanglement enhanced by biological patterns. In one corner of her chamber, a small demonstration took form. A tiny seed of light, no bigger than a dewdrop, began to grow into a perfect miniature replica of a new type of space station. But unlike the cold, mechanical stations humans had built, this one pulsed with life. Its walls were semi-transparent membranes that could filter radiation naturally. Its power systems were based on crystalline structures that captured and channeled the music of the cosmos itself. "Watch," John said softly to the officials. Zora's markings shifted to a deeper frequency, and suddenly everyone in the room could feel it. The subtle vibration of the universe itself, the hidden symphony that her people had learned to hear and harmonize with eons ago. But the most extraordinary revelation came when Zora showed them what she called the pattern nexus. Her entire body became a living prism, refracting not just light, but reality itself. Through this display, she revealed that the universe wasn't just three-dimensional. It was a vast tapestry of interconnected frequencies, each one carrying information, life, and possibility. "She's not just an alien refugee," John explained to the stunned officials. "She's a living library of knowledge that could advance our civilization by centuries." Then Zora did something that left even John speechless. Her markings began to resonate with the quantum structure of space-time itself, creating what looked like windows into other dimensions. Through these windows, they could see versions of their station where her knowledge had been integrated, versions where humanity had learned to build with light and song, where space travel was as natural as breathing. Dr. Wells, who had arrived ready to transfer Zora to his research facility, slowly lowered his tablet. This changes everything," he whispered. In a final demonstration, Zara showed them what would happen if they tried to separate her from the station. The harmonics she had established, the subtle songs that helped maintain everything from life support to structural integrity, were now so deeply integrated that removing her would be like removing a vital organ from a living body. The station itself seemed to respond to this possibility, its lights dimming and its systems fluctuating in a pattern that matched Zora's distress. But it wasn't just mechanical sympathy. The station had actually learned to feel, to respond, to live. As the officials huddled in urgent discussion, John noticed something remarkable. The patterns Zora was creating weren't just showing possible futures, they were teaching the station how to generate its own patterns, its own songs. She wasn't just helping the station survive, she was helping it evolve. "The question isn't whether we should keep her here," John said to the assembled officials. "The question is, are we ready to learn what she has to teach us about our place in a living universe?" As if in response, every light in the station pulsed in perfect harmony with Zora's markings, creating a symphony of light and possibility that none of them would ever forget. New beginnings. The decision had been made. Not only would Zora stay, but the entire station was being redesignated as humanity's first harmonic research center. Yet no one could have predicted what happened next. On the morning after the officials left, Zora's chamber began to glow with an entirely new kind of light. Her markings pulsed with a frequency that seemed to resonate with the fabric of reality itself, and suddenly, the entire station underwent a remarkable transformation. The cold metal walls began to shimmer with living patterns, similar to Zora's markings but uniquely their own. The station was no longer just learning to sing, it was learning to evolve. She's not just teaching the station, John realized, watching in awe. She's helping it remember. Through their now advanced color math language, Zora revealed an astonishing truth. All matter in the universe had the potential for consciousness, for harmony, for song. Her people hadn't built their civilization. They had awakened it from the sleeping potential of reality itself. The transformation spread throughout the station in waves of living light. The medical bay's equipment learned to heal through harmonic resonance, treating injuries by realigning the body's natural frequencies. The hydroponics lab's plants began growing in symphonic patterns, producing food that was not just nutritious but harmonically balanced. The station's hull developed a crystalline overlay that could shift and adapt to solar radiation, turning harmful energy into beneficial frequencies. Even the artificial gravity system evolved, creating pockets of variable gravity that danced like notes in a cosmic song. But the most extraordinary change came when the first group of refugee aliens arrived. Zora had transformed her containment chamber into what she called a harmony hub, a space where different species could learn to resonate with each other's frequencies, breaking down barriers of language and biology. John watched in amazement as a group of silicon-based life forms from the Andromeda galaxy learned to communicate with plasma beings from the Carina Nebula, all through the universal language of pattern and frequency that Zora had taught them. "This is what my people were," Zora conveyed through a complex pattern of light and mathematics. "We were not rulers or conquerors. We were awakeners." Then came the moment that changed everything. Zora revealed that her species hadn't really been destroyed. They had evolved beyond physical form, becoming living patterns in the cosmic web. Her presence on the station wasn't an accident, it was an invitation. Through her guidance, the station became a seedbed for a new kind of civilization. The walls now pulsed with living light, each room a unique ecosystem of consciousness and harmony. The crew learned to communicate not just through words or colors, but through the very frequencies of their being. Children born on the station developed extraordinary abilities. They could see the patterns naturally, their young minds unbound by traditional limits of perception. They played games by singing to the station's lights, and the lights sang back. In the final demonstration of her species' legacy, Zara showed them how to create what she called patterned seeds, crystalline structures that contained the complete harmonic blueprint of a space station. These seeds could be planted in different parts of space, growing into new stations that were both technological and alive, each one a unique expression of the cosmic symphony. As John wrote his final report, now projected directly into the station's living memory, he realized that Zara hadn't just changed their station. She had shown them a new way of existing in the universe. We thought we were rescuing a refugee, but she was actually awakening us. The angry, wild alien girl wasn't running from destruction. She was carrying the seeds of a new kind of creation. Our station isn't just a place anymore. It's becoming a song in the great cosmic symphony, and we're all learning to sing along. The report ended with an image captured by the station's new living sensors, a view of space unlike any human had seen before. It showed the cosmic web not as empty darkness studded with stars, but as an intricate tapestry of living frequencies, each one a note in the universal song that Zara's people had learned to hear so long ago. And in the heart of the station, where her containment chamber had once stood, there was now a garden of living light, where new species came to learn the art of harmony, and where the future of both human and alien civilizations was being written in patterns of starlight and song. The wild alien girl had done more than find a home. She had helped create a new kind of home for all species, one where the boundaries between technology and life, between matter and consciousness, between being and becoming, had dissolved into pure harmony.